And basically I found out that he was basically talking about me in the meeting and bashing me in the meeting. Welcome guys back to my channel. So I'm looking bare. Your girl ain't got no makeup on. I think I got some lashes. Hope they behave today. And of course I've got my headscarf because boy, but it's not that type of video. It's not. So in today's video I'm going to speak about a traumatic experience that I went through in my old church. So disclaimer, this is not to bash my old church or anything like that. However, I am here to share my experience. I'm here to give a story time in hope that it will help anyone who needs it. Right, so before I get into the story time, if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you subscribe. I will really appreciate it. The button is just below. Right, so let me get into the story time. So I have my phone, I've got some notes on my phone to just help me because this experience happened a good couple of years ago and I have been very silent about this experience. Only a few people know about this experience, those who are close to me. So literally only a small fraction of people know, but now I'm feeling very comfortable. I feel like I'm healed. I've gone through therapy and I've worked a lot on myself and the process and everything that I went through. I've digested it. So I'm feeling in a good space to definitely share what happened to me. So in my old church, there was a pastor that came to my old church. So they tend to move around pastors and stuff. So a new one came and, you know, every pastor has their own personality. Every pastor, you know, is different. Some pastors are more stricter than others. And of course, this one was stricter. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, you know what? I have to work alongside with a strict pastor. It is what it is. What happens is that they do check-ins. So because I was in a particular position, I'm going to say like an usher position because I think that's the best way to describe it. You know, you're working alongside with the pastor, you support, you help the church, you help the people. You know, you're there, you're available, you're there to serve and support. So they usually do check-ins from time to time, just to check about you, just to check about your spiritual life, just check-ins on you. So we all had to book in a check-in with him. So I booked one. I was like, you know what, let me get this over and done with. Let me just do my check-in with him. So I did a check-in with him, and to be honest, there was already friction already because of the type of person that pastor was. There was already a bit of friction from my side in not feeling too comfortable speaking with that pastor or even being around that pastor. But again, I'm here to support the pastor, so I had to just push that aside in my head, be obedient and just go for the check-in. So we sat down, he asked a series of questions, and one question that he asked was about how I read my Bible. So he asked me, oh, how do you read your Bible? And I said, oh, you know, I read a verse every single day. And I just remember being told off saying, you read a verse every day? Like, why do you only read a verse every day? You shouldn't be reading a verse every day. So I just remember just being really like told off, and you know, he was annoyed at the fact that I only read like one Bible verse each day. So I was thinking, oh my gosh, here we go. So he asked another question in terms of like, what are the most important things in my life? Like, what are the things that I'm working on? So I remember just mentioning my career, a series of other things. And then he was basically saying that he's surprised that God wasn't first, or God wasn't the priority, or I didn't order God first in that list. But in my head, I'm just thinking, no, you just asked me a question and I'm just answering it. That does not mean that God is not the priority. That does not mean that God is not the first just because I didn't put it in that particular order. So it was just an awkward meeting, and I was part of a women's group, and you know, I really like the women's group. It helped me to a certain degree. I was fully in the group, fully involved, and his wife was like my mentor in the group. And in the one-to-one, he basically mentioned that his wife mentioned X, Y, and Z to him. And one of the rules of part of the group is that when you open up to your mentor in the group, they are not allowed to disclose what is discussed between you two because it's private, so they're not allowed to disclose it. So she had already breached it, disclosed it to her husband, which I didn't feel comfortable with at all. And it was just an awful meeting. I just left feeling really awful and bad and annoyed and just not feeling myself. Right, so later on that day or the next day, there was a meeting. So usually when you're an usher in the church, you have meetings, ways to improve the church and just to best aid the church in a better way. So he had a meeting and I couldn't attend the meeting. I can't even remember the reason why, but I couldn't attend the meeting. And basically I found out that he was basically talking about me in the meeting and bashing me in the meeting. So 2 of my usher colleagues, I'm gonna call them, messaged me saying, Omalade, what's going on? Pastor said XYZ about you. We know that you're not like that. But you know, why is he mentioning these things? So I'm just paraphrasing what they mentioned in the message. Reason being, because I used to work closely with these 2, so they know me, they know who I am as a person. So what he was saying, it was like a surprise to them. So they were kind of messaging me to check in on me and to see that everything was okay. So after that, I was just like, wow, like how can one do that? How can one be bashing me in the meeting and just talking about me and talking bad about me, which I didn't feel comfortable about. So after that, I just had enough. I had enough. I remember I decided to write a letter. So I decided to write a letter to report him, because my old church, you can report, you know, if something's not right, there is that system to be able to report to higher authorities. I don't know what took over me to write that letter, but I was very frustrated. I was very angry. I was very upset, and I just didn't see no way out with the problem. I didn't feel that he was the type of pastor that I could speak to and come to and let him know how I was feeling and let him know that these were my frustrations. Just things were not running like that. So this is why I had to write that letter and report him in everything that had been happening to me in that church. So I remember writing all my frustrations, everything that went through, everything that I experienced with the one-to-one, just everything. And I even sent it to one of my usher friends just to sense check and check that everything was okay. Yeah, I sent it to the bishop. So I sent it to the bishop. So later on that day, I got a message from the pastor who was in charge of the ushers. So basically what happens is that you have a pastor who is in charge of all the ushers in each country. So he reached out to me. He was really lovely, really nice, messaged me and said, you know, they've got the letter, they've received the letter, asked me kindly to come into one of the branches to speak about it more, and was reassuring me that everything was going to be fine, everything was going to be okay. I shouldn't worry, that if I could come tonight to one of the churches to speak about what has happened. So I'm now thinking in my head, oh my gosh, there's going to be change. You know, the intention wasn't to get the pastor off, for him to lose his position or anything like that, but the intention was just for this to stop, just for this behavior to stop, for him to realize that what he's doing is not right, it's wrong. He needs to change it so that you have a better and improved congregation and a better and improved ushers that you are leading. So I now drive all the way to that particular branch, which was quite far where I live, and it was quite late in the evening. So they had like a late evening service. So I attended it and then I waited. And I just remember being in that service. It was a really good message, and I was thinking, yes, this is a good message and there's going to be some justice after when I have the meeting. So I waited around. I had to wait for everybody to leave, well, majority of people to leave the building, and then the pastor called me up into this office, which I've never been to, I've never seen before. So I now get into the office now, and guess who I saw? I see that pastor and his wife in the office, and I'm like, oh my goodness me. I already knew that this was not going to go down well. Not only that, the pastor in charge of the usher was there. Obviously, he led me into the office. I now see the bishop there. So the bishop in charge of the whole country. There was another pastor there as well. So I'm on my own. I'm in a room with all these pastors and the pastor at the branch that I was attending and his wife, and I'm there on my own. So they printed out my letter. So my letter was printed out. It was handed over to me. I was told to read my letter. So I'm like, wow, this is a setup. So I was basically tricked by the pastor who was in charge of the ushers. Maybe this was the instruction he was given, I don't know. But to me, I felt that I was already tricked already. And then I go into the room on my own. I didn't have like a witness or anyone with me to support me. I was just there on my own, and I was given my letter, printed, told to sit down, and I basically had to read my letter. So I remember reading my letter and I was shaking. Like, I was basically shaking, like, I was like nervous. You know when you're so nervous, anxious, shaking, everything. Like my voice was even trembling as I was reading my letter. So I basically had to read my letter out loud. So I'm now reading my letter out loud, and with every paragraph, the bishop is saying, okay, can you stop? Can you pause? And then is asking the pastor, did you do that? Did you say that? Etc. And the pastor was saying, no, I didn't do that, etc. And then I'm told to continue to read the letter. And then within every paragraph, he will stop me and then ask the pastor, did you do that? Did that happen? Etc. etc. So in my head, I'm just thinking, what is going on? I finished reading the letter and I was just like, wow, wow, wow. And I remember the bishop was like to me, I have a lot of maturing to do. I was just thinking, what was going on? And I can see that even though I didn't agree with that statement that he mentioned, I can see that he was trying to like sort it out, but it wasn't being sorted out at the same time. It really did feel like a setup to me. It did not work in my favor and in any shape or form. I felt like it was done in a way to make me look like the bad person, to make me look like the liar, to make me look like I'm the one that's just making up things. That's how I felt the meeting was, even though the bishop was trying to like solve it, or solve it in the way that he felt best to solve it, by bringing the pastor and his wife and having pastors there in that room. And I don't know, maybe he felt that that was the best way to sort it out, but in actual fact it was very, very traumatic for me. So I remember he brought out the Bible. He said that we both have to swear on the Bible, and we had to put our hands on the Bible and swear that none of us was lying. So I'm like, wow, like I have to swear on the Bible, okay? Well, anyway, I'm not lying, so I'm gonna swear on the Bible. I didn't know any better. I'm gonna swear on the Bible, like I'm not lying. So I now put my hand, and he makes us swear on the Bible to say that we're not lying. So I put my hand on the Bible, I swore on it, and I said that I'm not lying. Then obviously the pastor that was in charge of the branch that I was attending, he also put his hand on the Bible, and I remember him saying the words so passionately. It sounded like with so much sincerity, and he also swore and said that he never did any of those things. And I just remember deep in it like, oh my gosh, he's just lied. Like, did he just lie? Like, I was like, no, this can't be happening. Like, why is he lying? Why is he lying? Like, he did all of these things. And I was just thinking, you know, when you look at a pastor and you really look at them as like this perfect human being, and you're like to yourself, you know, they won't lie, you know, they're the man of God, you know, they won't lie. But I was just so shocked, because the environment that I'm coming from is quite legalistic. So there's a lot of tick boxes, you know, you have to be this perfect human being, you can't do anything wrong. And you know, it's been preached that of course lying is wrong, it's a sin. I was just thinking, bruh, he lied. Now, I'm going to backtrack a little bit within that meeting. I'm sorry if this is a bit all over the place. I remember his wife sat there, and she also lied too in the meeting. And she said that why would she tell her husband what me and her has discussed in private? You know, why would she do that? I was thinking, wow, you're lying. And I was like, no, you're lying. You did. Because what I told you was so particular that only you would know. And your husband mentioned that to me in our one-to-one, when I had a one-to-one with him. So she also lied too. So they both lied. this was a manipulation tactic, because she now made me feel guilty, because within the meeting, in front of all of them, she was like to me, oh, you know, you were doing so well in the women's group, you know, you were doing excellent, you were doing great. So saying it in a way that I've let myself down by basically speaking the truth, basically speaking about what's happened to me. So it was a manipulation tactic to make me feel guilty and bad because of me speaking the truth, turning around and now saying that, you know, you were doing so well and good in the group. Now, let me go back. So after when we both swore on the Bible, the bishop mentioned that, you know, if any of you guys are lying, then there will be a curse upon your life, something like that. Something along those lines. And I was just like, well, I'm not lying. I'm telling the truth. This is the truth. So I left and it was such a long meeting. It felt like it was going on forever. But because of how innocent I was, or innocent I was in the environment, I'd never been exposed to politics like this. This was my first time being exposed to politics. It did not feel like I was in a church anymore. It felt like I was in a corporate building, in a meeting room, and I'm going through a dispute with somebody. That's how it felt like. It felt so corporate, like that type of vibes. Like you've got HR there. Guys, I forgot to mention, I even had evidence. So you remember I mentioned that my two of my usher colleagues, they messaged me and mentioned a few things that he mentioned in the meeting that he did, the usher meeting. He mentioned a few things about me and bashing me. So I had evidence, and I was told to actually send screenshots of that evidence, and I did. I sent screenshots and everything, and they didn't acknowledge it. They didn't even like use it. They didn't even show it to him or anything like that. Nothing. It felt like things were just brushed underneath the carpet, sort of thing. So anyway, after all of that, I left. I remember getting into my car in the car park. I called my friend. I called my usher colleague, who was also a friend to me. She had also been exposed to a lot of politics in the church, so she was definitely more experienced than me. And I just remember crying on the phone to her, crying, saying, why has this happened? I was just telling the truth. How can he lie? Why has this happened? Why did they do it in that way? I just remember just pouring, crying, driving. I was in an emotional wreck. I was in an emotional state, like comforting me, supporting me. Like she's not surprised that it had gone this way. I guess maybe due to her experiences and what she's seen and being more closer to the politics of the church. And guys, basically, I just remember thinking, wow, I came home. I don't know if my sister was sleeping or if I spoke to her the next day. I remember telling her what happened, and she was just like, that's not right. I remember telling some of my other usher colleagues what happened who were in other branches. Maybe about 2 I told, or 3. I didn't really tell much, just ones that I trusted. And I remember them just saying, you know, thinking the same thing, that they didn't really have much words to say. You know, what could they say? If they haven't experienced it, what could they have said? And then there was definitely an aftermath. Like there was definitely an aftermath. What I went through after that, my experience of what I went through and how that turned against me. I could no longer do my position. So I was basically, I had to sit down, and he was still able to preach, still able to continue doing what he was doing, treating other usher colleagues unfairly. But yeah, that is a whole nother story in itself about the aftermath, how I dealt with that and what happened to me, basically. If you want to hear that part of the story, if you want to hear how things were like for me, definitely let me know. You know, definitely comment below. If you want to hear how it was like and, you know, what I was going through in my mind and how it was like sitting down and not being able to serve, let me know. Let me know. Comment below. But what I do want to say, again, this is an experience that happened in my old church. This is not the same story for everybody. Everyone goes through their own different experiences. Everyone goes through their own church hurt, trauma. But this was my experience. And I know that some people have gone through good, decent experiences in my old church. And a lot of us at the same time has gone through really traumatic experiences. But again, I'm not here to bash the church. I'm here to just speak about my experience and what I went through. And I know that there's many stories out there. I know that there's many people who have gone through similar things. I just want to mention that your experience should never be minimized. If you have gone through anything like this, your experience should never be minimized. Do not allow anybody to minimize your experience and to minimize what you have gone through, because that's the tactic that tends to happen sometimes, is that you get people from left, right and center, because they haven't gone through what you've gone through, or they've normalized certain things, they feel entitled to minimize what you've gone through. So never allow anyone to minimize what you have gone through. Another thing is, do not deal with this alone. Luckily, I had my usher colleague friend to support me and help me, and I was able to speak to her about it, which was really helpful. But unfortunately, I went through this experience alone. I went through this experience in silence. Even though I spoke to 1-2 people about what happened to me, they couldn't help me, even if they wanted to. So I went through it alone, and thank God that God is a healer and he helps and supports me through it. But I think I should have got more professional help earlier on. I ended up getting professional help later on. So I do advise that if you have gone through this, therapy, professional help, seek advice, speak. Do not deal with this alone. Never think that it's your fault, because a lot of the times I will try and justify his actions. So I will think to myself, oh, maybe he forgot, or maybe he doesn't remember, or maybe it's old age. You know, maybe he just couldn't remember what happened. You know, I will start to think of little things, because that's what happens. When you go through abuse, you justify an abuser's action, reasons as to why they could be right. It's like you support them in a sense. So never blame yourself. Never think that it's your fault if you have gone through an experience like this. Not everyone will understand your experience. Not everyone will understand your journey, and that is okay. That is fine. Sometimes you really want people to understand and get what you have gone through, but not everyone will. It's hard to accept, but not everyone will, unfortunately. And one thing that I have come to also realize is that never put a pastor or a bishop or anyone, or a bishop's wife, pastor's wife, anyone in a particular type of position, never put them in a pedestal. Jesus Christ put on a pedestal. He is our number 1 teacher. He is the one that we should run to. Yes, okay, there are decent ones out there. There are decent pastors' wives. I've met a couple of decent ones. I'm not trying to say all of them are like that. But one thing that I've learned from this experience is that I shouldn't put all my hopes in man, because at the end of the day, they are man, they are human, and they do lie. That's one thing that I personally don't do anymore, and I would advise you to do the same. But anyway, guys, this video was more or less to share my experience, just to support anyone who needs it. Make sure you comment below if you want to hear more about my aftermath and how I dealt with it. You know, I'm happy to do a video about that. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, and make sure you support a sister. Until next time.